Welcome to Teachers Tech. My name is Jamie and it's great to have you here. Today I want to show you how to use Power Query in Microsoft Excel. Now, if you've never used Power Query before, it is a game changer. It can make cleaning your data so much simpler. But you can do more than clean your data. You can transform your data. You can add columns and you can combine worksheets. There's so many different things you can do. So this is a beginner's tutorial in Power Query. If you're a complete newbie, this is where you can start. I'm going to have some data for you to download and follow along with me so that you can start feeling confidently using Power Query right away. Let's get started with this tutorial today on Teachers Tech. What is Power Query inside Microsoft Excel? So this is an editor that allows you to clean your data so it's easier to work with. So let me give you a little example of what we're going to do today in this tutorial. So this is the data that we're going to be working with and cleaning it. And so some examples, what we might want to do is maybe where it says salesperson here is to split it into two columns rather than using it in just the one. Maybe if I look at the date here, I don't want to have this time on the end. So I want to be able to modify that. There's a lot more things I can do in Power Query. I can add more columns. Now, the nice thing is if I get new data entered in, I can refresh through Power Query and it updates everything. So it's a great way to just keep up to date once you have it all set up. Now, there's three different steps with Power Query. We're going to get the data, and there's a numerous different ways that you can get the data. I'm going to be working with a couple different ways. I'm going to show you how to pull data from a website, and then we're going to be working with the worksheets that I have in the document down below. Then you're going to transform the data. So this is where you're going to clean the data, and then you're going to maybe even add to it if you want more formulas in there, or you want more columns to add different things so that it's easy to work with. And then you hit load and it loads it back into Excel. So those are the three steps. You're going to get the data, you're going to transform the data, and then you're going to load it back. Let's get started with our first example here with Power Query. If you want to follow along with today's activity, the link to this worksheet is down below in the description where you can click on it and download it and follow along with me. So first of all, where do you find Power Query? How do you get to the Power Query editor? Well, where you're going to find it is if you go up top to the tabs and look for data here. And then when we look down into the ribbon, this area right through here, this get and transform data is where we're going to be getting to the Power Query editor, where we're going to be getting our data. So remember, I said the first step is to get our data. So before we start any editing in the Power Query editor, let's get some data. And I want to show you how to get data from the web, because this is a handy feature, how we can pull tables from a website and put it into Excel, or we can even transform it with the Power Query editor. So I'm going to go ahead and just get some data from a website, and I'm just going to flip over to show you what website I'm going to grab, and it's going to be this one right here. So this is the top. I'll put the links to this in one of the tabs too, so you can copy paste it over, or you can search for something else as well. But let's say I want to take this information here. You can see it's in a table format from the web, top movies, lifetime adjusted with inflation. I'm just going to copy this over. So I'm just going to go Control C, and I'm going to go back to my Excel. Now, if I go get data, you can see from other sources I have from the web right here. There's also the shortcut right up here, and I'll just click on this one at this point. Now, all I have to do is just paste it in. So I'm just going to go Control V and hit OK. So what's going to happen now is it's going to load up. It's going to ask me what to load specifically, because it goes through the page and sees different tables. So you can see on this page, it found two different tables. If I click on this first one, you can see that there's nothing there. I don't really want that information, but on table 0 here, this is what I would see. It even gives me a web view over here of what I'd be seeing on it. So to make sure that you have the right thing, Now I could go hit transform and it would bring it into the editor. I don't want to do that yet. I'll show you how to transform with the other data that we'll be working with, but I'm going to drop down and go load to just to show you the different ways. We'll do it on 2 different websites. So I'll hit load to, and I'm going to get prompted with another question about where to import the data. So you can see, select where do I want it to go. Do I want it to go in the table, a pivot table report, pivot chart, only create connection, or an existing worksheet or a new worksheet. So you could pick what you want. I'm just keeping these the same, and I'm going to hit OK. And now it's making the connection. If we look over to the right, we have table 0. And as I hover over this information, this pops up in here. You can see I have some, I can do some things down here with delete and edit. I want to point out we have a brand new tab down here called table 0. So if I go over to the queries and connections, if I don't want this called table 0 anymore, if I go ahead and just rename it, so if I right click and just say top movies, because we don't want things to be named with just random ones, we can make our connection just so it's easier to see. We can name this in other places too in the editor, and I'll show you that later. Same thing with the tab down below. Maybe I probably don't want this as that, so I'm just going to be calling this, I'll call this top movies as well. So I better spell everything correctly here. So top movies, just like that. And you can move the tab around. So I'm going to do this one more time for you. I'm going to go grab some more data. I'm going to go and grab it from this site. And again, I'll put the link. And this is just Super Bowls, list of Super Bowl champions. And I'm going to grab this link here, Control C for copy, go back to Excel. And now I'm going to go to my data again and get data. Where am I getting it from? I'll go from this one this time, from the web. So I click it. I'm going to get to where I paste my URL, hit OK. And now this is going to load up with the same. But you'll see on this one, there's a lot more tables on here. So I can take a look at the different tables that they have through here to see what you might want. I'm just going to choose this one right here. And I'm going to go ahead and just hit load this time. And this time it will create another tab. You can see down below, since that already had a name on it, it named it. And the same thing with the, if I look over at the queries and connections, it says Super Bowl wins by team because that was already labeled from the website. Now, from the website, you can, so this is loaded into Excel. I can go into the editor as well. I'll show you really quickly what we can do here. But as soon as we bring this in through Power Query, look at the top. We have this query up here, and I can go to edit, and this will open the Power Query edit. And we'll get more into this in the next example with the sales data that we're working with. But if I hit edit, this is where it opens up. So you can see there's some more information in here. So we have our Power Query editor, but I'm not working in this yet. But this is where you do your transformation. So I'm just going to hit close and load. That's the first step. I just want to show you how easy it is to bring that data in from the web. So next, what we're going to be doing though, is bringing it in from a table or a range with the sales data that we have down below. And just to point out, those links that I just took from are here on the tab. If you look for links from the web, you can copy paste them over, but we're moving on over to our sales data to bring this into the Power Query editor. So let's bring in more data now, and we're going to bring in this range. So this is just a range, it's not a table. It actually will convert it to a table as we bring it into Power Query. So we do need to select this now. So what is it I want? Well, it's going to be this right through here. So we select the range, go back up to data, and this is where we can just click this. So mine is a little bit squished up. You just look for that icon here, but this is the bring it from a table or range. Right before I do that, I want to point out, and I didn't mention before, look at all the different types of data that you could bring in. In this tutorial, we're only going to bring in 2 types here, but I just wanted to point out there's so many different ways that you can bring data in and then transform it in the Power Query editor. But we're going to be bringing it in on this time just from this range that's on this sheet. So I'm going to just click it, and notice it says create table now. So it's going to be creating the table. My table has headers. Yes, it does. You can see shoe type, salesperson, order date, and sales. All we have to do now is hit OK. And it's going to load up the Power Query Editor. If I look at the very top, you can see it says Table 5, Power Query Editor here. And right away, before we start doing any changes to this, any transformation, I want to give you a little walk around here. Let's start over on the left-hand side here, and my navigator pane is already open. Yours might be closed, so you just have to click this right here, and this might be what yours looks like. I'm just going to pop this open, expand it, and you can see the different queries that we already have in the Power Query Editor here. If I click on the website once, all that information is in here already. And you can see how I can switch to the different queries on it to transform any of them. And as we add more will show up here. Now let's move over to our query settings on the other side, on the right-hand side. And I just want to point out this applied steps, because every time I make a change, you're going to see steps added here. When a steps gets added, they're going to have this choice to exit, to delete it by just hitting this X as well. And if I right click on this, you can see I have more options as well too. But we'll come back to this as we add more. I'll point out the different steps that we have happening here. Okay, so this is where we could change the name. We can change your name in a few different places. So if I was going to change the name, maybe I'll turn this into PQ. So PQ is going to stand for Power Query, and I'm just going to say PQ Sales Data like that. So as I changed it here in the properties, it changed it over here as well, PQ sales data. I like not leaving them just as table 5 so we can see, make sure we're on the right tables. If I right click, I could have renamed it over here, and you can see how I have those options as well. Okay, let's move up and take a look at some of the tabs, because we'll be going through the different ones today, on not in detail, but we'll be touching on a bit of them. So under the Home tab, this is where we're going to be using this one a lot. And I just want to point out this close and load, because every time we need to bring it back to Excel, remember this is the third step I talked about earlier. We need to close and load it, and then it loads it back into Excel. But I'll be showing that as we go along. In here, we're going to start our transformations. If you take a quick look at the ribbon here, you can see how we can change our data type. We could merge our queries and do different things under this Home tab in this ribbon. But when we get into more detailed transformations, we have this Transform tab, and we're going to be using some of the different functions in here, like split column and a few other things to be showing you what else you can do. But in other tutorials, dive a little bit deeper into the different, a lot more transformations. Add column, we'll be using this one. We'll talk about how we can add columns from examples or custom columns to our data. Remember, it's just not about cleaning our data. We can add more things to this to make it a stronger report. And this all connects. Once we have all these steps applied to it, we don't have to redo them. Even as we add more data to our original sales data table, it will all get updated when we refresh it. And I'll show you how to do that. Now, just looking at view, we have some more options here. You can see how we can go to the advanced editor as well, but I'm not going to be doing that today. So what I'm going to do right now is go back to Home and just click the close and load, and you're going to see how it loads it back into Excel. So I click close and load, and look at the bottom. We have PQ sales data. I don't have to change the name here because I changed it before. And when I closed it, it created the new tab. If I look at my queries connections, I can see it over here as well. Now, I want to point out that we still have our original sales data here. It doesn't change the original file on it. So this will stay the same until I add more to it. This is what, at the end of this tutorial, I'm going to add a couple of more examples, and then you'll see how Power Query can just adapt with the new information and then put it through all the different queries that it has. So this is our first step here. We have our query set up with our PQ sales data. Now we're going to start transforming it. Let's open up our Power Query editor again, and we can do this in a couple different ways. So right now we're just in Excel. If I want to go back, if I click anywhere inside of this here, this table, as soon as I do that, if I look up top, I get a couple extra tabs. So I have table design and query. So I could go to query here, and then look, I have edit. So as soon as I click edit, this brings me back into the Power Query editor. I'm just going to close this one more time because I want to show you one more way you can do this. So I'm going to hit close. And if I look over at the query and connections over here at PQ sales data, if I just double click on this, it opens it up as well. So just a couple different ways to get to the editor once you've already loaded it once into Excel. So you can go back and then keep on making transformations to it. Now, what are the first things we want to transform? So I just want to point out the things that I want to transform first is if I look at the titles or the column headings here, I don't want it to be just one word. You can see how it says shoe type. And I actually want to change this from salesperson to sales rep here too. So to do this, very simply, just double click in here and I'm just going to be giving it a space here. And this one, I'm going to double click in it and I'm going to just change this to sales rep like that. Order date, I'm going to change the spacing in it. And notice under each one, if I look at the column, so you can see how it identifies what it is, whether it be text, this is going to be a date here. And with sales here, I'm going to change it from sales, and because I'm going to do something later, this is going to be total sales right here. So now those are just some changes that we made, some really quick ones. If I go now to go and close and load, if I watch what happens over here, this will get updated. So now I have those spaces. You can see I have sales rep, order date, and total sales. So we made our first transformations to this. I'm going to go ahead and load this back up again just by this method, double clicking. Now, I want to point out, if we go over to our query settings on the applied steps, look at this. It says renamed columns. If I wanted to go back a step, all I have to do is exit this and this would go back and put them back as they were before. So easy to go back with the steps. This will remember all the different steps that we are, how we're transforming this data. Let's do a couple more things here. Let's look at these two columns here. We have order date and total sales. I want to change this right here to be only, I don't want it to see how it says 12 a.m. I don't want it to be that way. So what I can do, if I select this column just like this, and if we go and stay into the home tab and look in the ribbon, see how it says date and time, and I drop down, look at my different options. I can go date, time, date. If I just click date like this, it's modified it. It doesn't have the time on it. And I can change it even to something like this to currency. So if I go to this where it says total sales, I know this is a dollar amount and it's just right now decimal number. Drop down, we can go currency here. So I can go currency and you can see now it's being identified as that. Let's close and load this and see what we have, how it's looking in Excel now. Close and load. And we just wait a moment for it to get updated. So you can see now that we have our order date different, might not look different. I could format it at dollar signs. I'm not worried about that, but it is being recognized as a currency at that point now. All right, so those are the first transformations that we did. Let's open it back up again. This time we click in it, we go back to our query, go to edit, open back up, and then let's try a few more transformations. How I want to clean this now is that I notice I have some extra rows that I don't want in this data. Kind of messes it up a bit. If I look at where it says total sales rep here, and it has this after every so often for each one, I want that gone. And I'm going to show you a couple different ways that you can remove this from your list. If I go up to the top of any column, I have this where I can do some sorting and filtering. Now, what I could do is if I go to look at all the clicks here, if I just click off of this and hit OK, it's taken that out now, just like that. If we look over to our applied steps, I'm going to go ahead and just hit X here. And you can see it puts it back. So I just want to point that out, how easy it is to go back. Let's try to sort this a different way or to filter it. So what I'm going to do is this time add a text filter, and I want it with does not begin with. So I'm going to click this, and all I have to do is, so it does not begin with total. So I know everything in this row right here, this begins with total, total, total. So I want to keep everything that doesn't have total on it. So I'm just going to hit OK. And you can see it sorts it that way as well. So I just wanted to show you a couple different ways there that you can sort your data. You remember you can do this to different ones. So if I look at the sales rep, this has everybody selected. If I only wanted certain people, so if I could take off people to make the list shorter as well. But you can go back and I can click them on again. So I wanted to point out that feature of sorting. So that was removing, also removing rows that don't need to be there. So if I go ahead and just hit close now, watch the data get updated, watch these rows that come through here, and there we go. It's a little bit cleaner now. Let's move on to our next transformation. So for the next transformation, what I want to show you how to do is how to split a column. So if you look at the sales rep one, I actually want it to be first name, last name in two different columns here. So I'm going to do this in Power Query Editor, and it's super easy to do. So I'm going to go up and make sure you're under the Query tab and edit, or however you want to get back into the editor. So what column is it that I want to split? Well, it's going to be this sales rep right here. So I'm selecting this column. And if I look right above it, so I'm in the Home tab, you can see if I look into the ribbon, I have split column here. There is the drop down here, and I want to split it by delimiter right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. The delimiter is the space, or depending on what is breaking up the first and second name in this. So if I drop down, you can see, sometimes people have a comma or colon or semicolon, all these things. But for us, it's really easy. It's just the space. When do I want to have this split at each occurrence of the delimiter? So that's all I need to do. I hit OK. And look at that, we have two different columns, but I don't want to be called 1 and 2. So if we just go back here really quickly, let's make an adjustment to this, and we're going to say first name here, and then we'll go into this one, and then we'll put last name just like this. So make those changes. Let's go ahead and hit close and load, and you're going to see that this data gets updated now. And then it's going to have the two different columns for it with the first name and last name, just like that. And I do want to point out, if I go back to the original sales data, the tab down below, nothing's changed in here yet. It's all the same. We would have to add something to this to make any changes to this. Okay, so we're getting lots of good transformations happening to our data here. Let's go back to the editor and do some more. So now what I want to do is add some new columns that weren't in the data to begin with. And so we're going to base this upon the date here. So let's go back into our query editor, open this up. And now what I want to do is it's going to be based on the order date here. So I am going to select this right here. Now look up at the tabs across, we have add column. Let's go from example this time. You can see if we drop down, we have from selection here. So that's what I want to have because I've selected the order date. And what do I want to have happen? Well, let's say we take this order date and I just want the month to come up with. So if I start typing January, you can see it's picked it already. So if I choose January here and hit OK, it goes through. So it made this column and it's matching it versus the date too. So maybe I want to add another one. Let's do it this one more time. And I'm going to go again from the selection here, from selection. And this time, just start typing day. So I'm going to click in this cell here, and I'm going to type day. And you can see I have some options here. So I want it to be just written. And I'm going to select Saturday and hit OK. So now it's we have our month, and it has the day name too as well. So that's some simple ways you can add some columns. I'm going to show you some more ways that you can add columns, even putting a formula in here. But let's go back to our home, close and load, and see what we have in Excel now. And we have those two extra columns. And I can move these columns around in the Power Query Editor too as well. And I'll show you how to do that in a bit. So next, I want to add a column that will actually calculate a value using a formula. So I'm going to be using the builder, the formula builder inside the Power Query Editor, and it won't be a super complex one. So if you've done formulas before in Excel, you should be able to follow along with this, but you can put exactly what I put and it should work for you as well. So what we're going to do is build a column that will look at the total sales over here. And if it sees something over $5,000, it's going to give a bonus of 10%. And if it's not above $5,000, then it's just going to be zero. So they're not going to get any bonus. Okay, so let's go ahead, get back into our editor. And this is going to be adding a column again. So we need to go to add column up top here. This time it's going to be a custom column. So I'm going to choose custom column. And this is where I'm going to put the custom column formula right in here. But let's change the name of this because this is going to be a bonus. So I'm going to call this bonus. You can call it something else if you would like. But let's go ahead and start our formula. You can see the equal sign is already there. And so what did I say? I said, well, if the total sales is going to be above $5,000. So let's just start with that. So total sales, I could type this, but what I like to do is just double click or hit insert on this. So choose what you want and hit insert. But before we do that, what we want to do is write if. So I'm going to just put if, and I'm just going to click off this so this goes away. If what? If total sales is what? Greater than 5,000. So I'm going to put 5,000. What do I want to have happen? So if total sales is greater than 5,000, then, so I have to type the word, whoops, spell it correctly. Then I'm going to click off of this so you can see what we're doing here. Then total sales, I'm going to put total sales again. I'm just double clicking on it this time. Then total sales times, so we have to use our times sign here. The star times what? Well, it's 10%, 0.10, like that. So times 10, but we're not quite done. So this is the first part. We have if total sales is greater than 5,000, then total sales times 10%, 0.10. Else, so this is in the other case, what happens if it's not above 5,000? So I'm going to type else. Else, it's just 0. So I put 0. And look down below, it says no syntax errors have been detected. The OK is here. If I had an error in here, the OK wouldn't show and it would say that I'd have an error. But if we read this one more time, if total sales is above 5,000, then total sales times 10%. Else, it's 0. So let's go ahead and just hit OK. And now we have this new column here. And again, we can change it. Remember how we changed it at the beginning to currency? If I go back to home and then look at the data type and drop down, we could put this back to currency here. We got our dollar sign. And that way, if you had any of the rounding issues there, it will round it correctly like this. Take a look at all the things that we've done in our steps that we could delete if we wanted to. I just want to point this one more time. You can see all the things that we're doing. And every time I close and open again, these stay here. So let's go and close this up here and see what we have here. And this will load up here and we'll get our new column over here. So I just want to point out, I'm going to go back into the editor here and I can see the rounding is an issue right here. So I'm going to go back to this one and just make a couple changes. And I'm going to show you how we can round this. So I'm just going to move over here. And if I right click on this one, and if we go to, just go to change type, and you can see how we could change it to whole numbers and everything. I'm going to go actually transform and go round. So I'm just going to go to this and hit round. And it's going to ask to how many zeros. And I'm just going to hit OK. So even though we're seeing it over here, I'm just going to make the change here. So it's going to force the round over here. So the other thing I do want to point out, we can drag these columns, and I mentioned I can change them before. If I wanted them side by side, I can just click and drag this over. And now it's beside total sales and the bonus is right there. So maybe it's easier to see. We close and load one more time. And then you're going to be seeing a couple things get updated here. You're going to see the column move here. So we could see they're side by side, and then we are rounded to 2 decimal places there. All right, let's move on to some more transformations now. So now what I want to do is merge queries and join tables. So I need to go to the categories tab at the very bottom here. And this hasn't been put into Power Query Editor yet. This is already a table. So all I'm going to have to do is just click in it and go to data. And just like what we did at the very beginning, we're going to get it from table range right here. And this is really all we have to do. You can see it loads up here. Again, I'm going to rename this. I just don't want it to be called that. So I'm going to rename this. I'm going to call this PQ categories like this, or just PQ. Yeah, we'll go category like here, just so we can see the difference between it. And we put it through Power Query. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit close and load. And then at the very bottom, we're going to get a new tab right there that says PQ category. So that's all we're going to actually do with this one. And then we're going to go back to our PQ sales data. So what we want to be able to do is add a category to this. So you can see I have shoe type here, but each of these shoes are in a category, and that comes from this over here. So it's going to come from, you can see the shoe type is here, and then the category is here. So I want to be able to add that to a whole new table by joining them together, and it's going to create a whole new tab. So we're going to go to our PQ sales data. So, and then we're going to go up to our query and then edit this. And take a look under the home tab here. If you look across the ribbon, we have merge queries. So I'm just going to drop down on this, and I want to merge queries as new. So select that. And what you're going to get are a couple different options from the top and the bottom, two different selections to make. So 2 different tables. So the first one is correct. We're going to take the PQ sales data and then drop down on this other one, and we're going to pick PQ category. So we have 2 different ones, but we're going to try to join them, but we need, what's going to be the common thing? It's going to be this column and this column here. So shoe type and shoe type. And if we look down below, this selection matches 15 of 15 rows from the first table. So we know it's connecting correctly. So this should be a great match. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit OK to this. So this is going to load up. And if I move over here, all the way, I should have this new category it's called PQ category here. But the problem is, look at it, all says table here. And what's happening is I have to just change it under my sorting here. See how it's selected both shoe type and category? Well, I don't want this to be shoe type. I already have shoe type. I want it just to be category listed. So I hit OK. And now I have all the categories. But I probably don't want this at the end. So I'm just going to drag this over to the very beginning, because I think that the category should come first. So I have this category, then shoe type. Now I'm going to change the name here, and I'm just going to call this category and delete this like this. So I could put shoe category and change it. So I have my category now, and I can see that the Oxford's in the dress, and then who sold it from here. So let's go ahead and close this and see what we have. And what you're going to notice is at the very bottom, you're going to get a new tab that gets created called Merge 1. Now, this didn't change anything in the PQ sales data, so this is great. You could do a lot of joining tables and merge queries, and it's not going to affect all the work that you did before. You're creating a whole new tab. Now, you might not want to call this Merge 1 on this one, so even if I was calling it PQ category, you could name change this to something that you would, especially if you have a lot, that you could tell them apart. So just like I've showed you before how to change the names, I'm not going to worry about this because I only have the one in this example. And so these are all the different transformations that I want to show you in this beginner's tutorial, just to get you started, to show you how powerful Power Query in Excel can be. But I do want to show you one more thing, and that's if we go back to our original sales data, we can put more in here now and refresh it, and it's going to come through on our Power Queries that we've already created. So I'm back on the original sales data table, and just below here, I'm going to enter in a new record here. So this will be, I'm just going to use the type of shoe will be a derby. So we'll type derby. The salesperson will be Rachel, and I'll put a date in here. So I'll make it in the 7th month here. So I'll make it into July, and I'm just going to pick a day in July. It'll be July 2nd, and an amount. So I'll put this one above $5,000 because then you can see that the bonus, it will still do the equation that we did. And we'll add one more here. So this is going to be a sandal here, and it will be by Joey. And we'll put a date in again here. We'll make this in July, and this will be on the 4th. And this will be below. So we'll just do a couple like this. So we've added a couple new entries. Now nothing's changed yet. If we click inside the table and go up to table design up top, I wanted to point this out where it says refresh. If we go drop down and just click refresh all, and then look, it's loading up all through these things. We can see Excel working now. It's all done. Let's go see if we have anything extra now of these in our PQ sales data. So if I click on it and look at this, we have these two added right here that we just added to our original sales data, and I uploaded when I refreshed it. And it even did the Power Query here, the formula that we put in, and gave the bonus. So you can see how super powerful this can be, because you can just add more data to your tables and everything updates when you refresh it. You don't have to rebuild this all again. I'll just move over to my merge one also, and you can see the updates are also there. So I hope you like this walkthrough of how to use Power Query in Microsoft Excel. So this has been a beginner's tutorial. I hope this gets you started in understanding the power behind Power Query and why you want to be using this. So thanks for watching this week on Teachers Tech. I'll see you next time with more tech tips and tutorials.